Hello everybody, my name is Mariako, and today we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming 1.11 Minecraft update. Now that we've reached pre-release, we know pretty well what to expect from the update, with only minor tweaks and bug fixes happening before release. So it's a good time to look at what the changes are, and to know what to expect when updating our worlds and servers. Keep in mind that we'll be focusing mostly on the changes that affect survival, but I will try to mention every important change. Jumping right in, there have been a few changes to the core gameplay via changes to shields and hunger saturation. First is that shields can now block 100% of melee damage, up from the 66% that it was previously, meaning attacks from things like zombies can now be blocked completely. As you can now block melee attacks entirely, it means that burning zombies will not set you on fire if you block their hit, and the wither effect from wither skeletons can be blocked as well. Strangely, you can also now block 100% of damage from a creeper blast, so long as you're facing in the right direction, obviously. And shields have also been fixed so that their enchantments and durability persist after you combine them with a banner. Saturation has also changed in a pretty noticeable way. Quick insight for those who are not aware, saturation is effectively a hidden second hunger bar that fills up as you eat, and this is what determines how long it takes for your hunger to start dropping again, as well as how long you can get the increased regeneration speed when you're hurt. This saturation level is lowered by most things that you do, whether that's jumping, breaking blocks, attacking, etc. But as of 1.11, it will be draining much slower than it has in the last few versions of the game. This essentially means that your food is going to be lasting a lot longer in general play, but there is one exception to this. The natural health regeneration that you get when your hunger is mostly full now drains your saturation even faster than it did before. For example, with the new 1.11 rates, you will get 30 sprint jumps out of the same amount of saturation that you do from regenerating a half heart of health. Even eating a steak, one of the highest saturation food sources, will only give you maybe 4 hearts of the fast regeneration before your saturation runs out and your hunger starts draining again. Basically what this means is that your food will be lasting a lot longer when you're doing things like mining or building, but if you're taking constant damage, then it will likely drain even faster than it did before. So playing better and avoiding unnecessary damage is now pretty well rewarded. One other small thing of mention regarding hunger is that your hunger bar will now display properly when you're in a boat or a minecart. It no longer disappears like it used to, for whatever reason. Next are a few changes to villagers. They had a few small changes, things like farmers now potentially selling more apples or cookies than they did previously, or that they can now be much more easily named with name tags, so no more needing 2 people or weird shenanigans to name them. 1.11 also brings back the Greencoat villager and has him spawning naturally in villages. We know this villager as the Nitwit, as he has no profession and offers no trades. He's really just there to derp around. You can also find and cure zombie villagers of this type as well. Much more importantly, however, is the addition of a new villager. This villager is a variant of the librarian. He looks the same as the librarian, but is called a cartographer. As you may have guessed, he sells things relating to maps, so blank maps or compasses are obvious choices, but of course he supplies more than that. This villager is the only source for the new exploration maps. There are currently 2 of these in the game, the Ocean Exploration Map and the Woodland Exploration Map. Both give you a special unrevealed map with a lovely little map drawing on it, as well as having a small icon marking the location of a particular type of structure. These maps will show your position relative to the area via a white dot. The smaller the dot is, the further away from that area you are, and you can find your way to that area by simply moving in the cardinal directions that would eventually lead that white dot into the map. The Ocean Exploration Map will mark the location of an ocean monument, so what does the Woodland Exploration Map mark? It marks a brand new structure called a Woodland Mansion. These will generate naturally in forest and roof forest biomes and are a massive 3-story high procedurally generated structure made from a variety of wood and stone types. As these are procedurally generated from many small pieces, over 50 of them in fact, each one you visit will be completely unique. They can contain several hidden rooms as well as some rare rooms, such as the one containing a giant wool chicken, and some of them even have hidden treasures within. Keep in mind that some of these can be extraordinarily far away, so even after you get a woodland exploration map, you should be prepared for a very long search to finally reach it. You'll find plenty of naturally spawning mobs within, but there are some challenges that are unique to the mansion. Those challenges come from the addition of some new hostile mobs that spawn exclusively in these structures. Referred to as outcast villagers, or illagers, you will find the Vindicator and Evoker mobs, as well as the Vex that the Evoker summons, exclusively within the Woodland Mansions. Vindicators are essentially crazed villagers that will charge at you with an axe. They don't do anything particularly special and aren't too difficult to deal with, though as of 1.11, any mob that does attack you with an axe will actually disable your shield, so watch out for that, and the Vindicators do have one interesting property. If you name one of these guys Johnny, as an obvious reference to The Shining, he will start attacking everything except other Vindicators and Evokers, which is quite an entertaining thing to watch. The Evokers will prefer to stand back, being a warlock of sorts, and will mostly attack by casting a spell that raises small, trap-like things in a straight line along the floor that will damage you if you don't move out of the way. You'll be able to see this coming, as the Evoker will raise his hands up to channel his magic before successfully attacking. If you get too close to the Evoker, this attack will change slightly, and instead raise a circle of these traps around the Evoker as a defense of sorts. The Evoker also has a weird habit of turning blue sheep red, an apparent tribute to Age of Empires. The Vex is a small imp-like and ghostly creature that is summoned by the Evoker. These will float around you, including straight through solid walls. Occasionally they will turn slightly red, indicating that they are about to charge in to attack you. Vex have a limited lifespan and will automatically start dying off after a short while, so you won't end up overrun with them, but you can get quite a little army after you if you're not careful. All three of these new mobs are hostile towards the player, regular villagers, and iron golems, and have no problems at all with other hostile mobs like zombies. The Vindicators and Evokers will spawn in once when the mansion is first generated and never again, so they can't be farmed, nor will they return to attack you if you decide to stick around the mansion once you clear it out. You may be wondering why you would bother to enter these structures other than simple curiosity. While the Illagers do drop emeralds, the main reason would actually be to obtain the new Totem of Undying. This is a special item dropped by the Evokers and is essentially a get-out-of-death-free card. To get the effect of the totem, you need to hold it in one of your hands, so you'll either be switching to it or, more likely, simply holding it in your offhand when you think it may be necessary. Essentially, this totem will trigger when you would have otherwise died, preventing the death and giving 4 hearts of absorption as well as a short regeneration effect. The totem is a one-time use and is destroyed in the process, so use them wisely. These will likely be used most often for things like the Wither or End Dragon fights, or if you're like me, you'll save them in a chest somewhere and never think to use them again. Going back to world generation for a second, there was one other somewhat significant change. That is that you can now find end gateways randomly throughout the end, so rather than having to walk all the way back to one of the ones you generated after defeating the dragon, you will occasionally come across them as you're out searching for Elytra or Shulkers. Yes, you will be searching for Shulkers, you'll see why soon. These randomly generated gateways will teleport you straight back to your spawning platform on the main end island. While on the subject of the end, you can also now use maps there. There's not much to say about this, though they are a pretty decent way of keeping track of everywhere you've been when you're out searching for new end cities to pillage. One other thing you will occasionally be finding out in the world are cursed enchantments. These are largely considered tools for map makers, but they will be available in chests even in survival, as well as via villager trading, and you will inevitably come across them eventually. These are purely negative enchantments that can be found on various pieces of equipment. The Curse of Binding will be found on armor, and once that piece of armor is equipped, it cannot be removed until it breaks from durability damage or you die. The Curse of Vanishing will make the item vanish or be destroyed when you die, so it cannot be retrieved. Returning to the mobs, we do have one other new mob that was added to the game, and this one is a lot more friendly than the ones previously mentioned. Minecraft now has llamas. These spawn naturally in both extreme hills and savanna biomes in one of 4 different colors. They need to be tamed, similar to horses, and both wheat and hay bales will speed up the taming as well as make the babies grow faster, with hay bales also serving as the way that you breed 2 llamas together. They are neutral mobs, so they won't attack you, at least not unless you attack first. They do actually have a special attack, which, being llamas, is of course the ability to spit at anything they don't like. They will only do this if they are attacked or if they see a wolf. Llamas don't like wolves, apparently. They do have a bit more use than that, though. Unfortunately, you can't control them directly, despite being able to ride on them, though you can use a lead on them and they do keep up fairly well behind a horse. They also have a unique property of automatically forming caravans, meaning when you lead one llama, any others in the area will try to follow behind it automatically, forming a little line. These caravans are limited to 10 llamas at a time, though you can form multiple caravans at once by leading multiple llamas. They will even try and maintain this line when leashed to a fence, so it's reasonably easy to keep them contained. They can be equipped with a chest, giving them a randomly assigned 3 to 15 slots of inventory space, and instead of getting a saddle, you can place a carpet on them, with each of the 16 colors of carpet giving a unique design. Some of which are, quite entertaining. That's it as far as new mobs go, though there were some minor changes to already existing mobs as well. Here are some of the most noticeable ones. Elder Guardians and Zombie Villagers now have unique subtitles, as well as some unique sound effects for Zombie Villagers and Wither Skeletons. Skeleton traps are reduced to 1/5 of their previous spawn chance, thankfully. Creepers that have a potion effect applied to them, say with a splash potion, will leave a lingering potion cloud of that potion effect behind if they explode. Guardians drop cooked fish if they die while on fire, and Elder Guardians drop wet sponges instead of dry ones. Blazes and Endermen will take small amounts of damage from splash water bottles. Raw Rabbit is now affected by looting. Skeleton Horse Bone Drops will now also be affected by looting. Husks will try to avoid going in water. And of course, the most important change of all, chickens now have their neck texture. Now, there is one other thing that I have thus far left out in regards to mobs, and that's the new purpose that shulkers have. And oh, what a fantastic purpose it is. Killing shulkers will now get you a shulker shell item. These shells seem to drop about 50% of the time, and this is also increased slightly by looting, so be sure you have that on your sword when you go to collect them. So, what are they for? If you take 2 of them, and put them around a chest in a crafting table, one above the chest and one below it, you'll get a new item called a shulker box. This is essentially a single chest with a snazzy opening animation, but it has one other property to it that makes it arguably the most important change of this update. The shulker box is Mojang's answer to the ever-growing inventory space issues that the community has been complaining about for years. These are essentially chests that can be broken and still keep their inventory, meaning they behave much like backpacks or special bags do in modded Minecraft, just with the additional step of placing and breaking them. You can carry multiple of these with you, effectively multiplying your inventory space and giving you a ton of organization potential, and potentially making dying in lava really devastating. You can also dye them any of the 16 colors in the game, for either aesthetics or for easier organization. These can also be placed within chests or ender chests for further space-saving, organization, and ease of transporting large numbers of items. Like regular chests, hoppers can put items into these boxes as well as pull items out, and they can be moved very easily with redstone, as they can be broken with pistons, moved with hoppers and droppers, and even placed with a dispenser. In addition to all of that, they can be placed sideways, or even upside down, and will open up in that direction, though they do require at least a half block of space in the direction they're opening to be accessed. They won't even open if it's a transparent block on top of them, unlike regular chests. And no, you cannot put a shulker box inside of another shulker box, there is no infinite storage. While loosely on the subject of redstone, there wasn't a whole lot specifically done with it, beyond a small change that makes trapdoors automatically open when placed if they're powered. That is, aside from one significant change, which is the inclusion of the observer block. This is a redstone-related block that's crafted with 3 cobble across the top and across the bottom of a crafting table, quartz on one side of the middle row, and redstone in the last 2 slots. If you haven't kept up with the Windows 10 and Pocket Edition versions of the game, the observer block was first implemented there as an alternative to the BUD, or Block Update Detector, abilities that we have on the Java version. In basic terms, this block will send out a redstone signal anytime the block that it's facing updates in some way, whether that's from a block being placed, water freezing to ice, a tree growing, etc. There are some interesting technical aspects to this block, the first being that it also detects block state changes. This means we can detect things like doors opening, which we can't currently do with the buds that we already have. It also outputs a 1-tick pulse, which will be great for compacting certain redstone circuits. It can be moved by pistons and emits a pulse each time that it moves, making it a movable power source that powers in one specific direction. It strongly powers blocks, outputs a full 15 strength signal, and can be pointed in any direction. Even after some of the unfortunate nerfs to its usefulness in the snapshots, it is still a unique block with a lot of interesting potential. Also, don't worry, the already existing buds aren't going anywhere in the Java edition of the game. This is simply another option that we now have to work with. There is one other change that does pretty drastically influence some redstone related builds, though it's not directly related to redstone itself. There's a new game rule added to the game called max entity cramming. What this does is prevent mobs from being stacked too drastically in a single block space. More specifically, using the default settings, if there are more than 24 mobs standing inside each other, they will start taking large amounts of damage. This effectively means that mob farms, particularly spawner-based ones that funnel all the mobs into a one-by-one area, will no longer be particularly effective. There are numerous solutions to this depending on the circumstances. Moving mobs around into storage cells or keeping them in a 3x3 area should be relatively straightforward in most cases. Though, with some mobs, like blazes, it may get a little bit tricky to reduce them to one hit and contain them. Do keep in mind that this is a game rule and it can be disabled entirely by typing /game rule max entity cramming 0, or you can set the number to a more reasonable value like 150 to 200 to still allow reasonable use of farms, but also prevent the accidental overloads of mobs. Why they felt the need to make the default value as low as 24, well, who knows. Another small change is the inclusion of many more items that can be used as fuel in a furnace. This is a pretty inconsequential change since most of these items last a very short amount of time as fuel. It was mostly just done for consistency, but now if you have the extra items made of wood or wool when you're struggling for fuel sources, you can most likely use them. There are several other minor tweaks in 1.11 that just make things a little bit better, such as the elytra can now be placed on armor stands, rail hitboxes now only take up half a block instead of a full block, flower hitboxes actually match the flower now, so you no longer need to click around until you find it. You can pull items out of flower pots by right-clicking on them. Game warnings are now displayed above the hotbar instead of in the chat. These are the messages like when you couldn't sleep in a bed or when you would reach the build limit. The chat limit has been raised up to 256, up from 100, so you're no longer limited to less than a tweet-length message. New sounds for anvils breaking when they fall, as well as cauldrons being filled or emptied with buckets and water bottles. Witches that are spawned from witch huts no longer despawn. Fishing rods are now much more effective at pulling entities. And damage colors from the durability bars of items are now brighter, more visible colors. There are also a few changes that don't particularly affect survival, but I figured were worth a quick mention. Most notably, the addition of the locate command. Typing /locate and then the name of a structure, and pressing tab will give you a list of those options, will give you the coordinates of the closest one of that type, meaning you can easily find strongholds, fortresses, end cities, etc. Definitely a massive help anytime you need to find one of those structures and you aren't limiting yourself to pure survival. There is also another new game rule, Do Weather Cycle, which will prevent the weather from changing automatically, allowing you to have perpetually clear skies or endless rains. The creative inventories have also been organized a bit more, with cobble walls being moved to the decoration blocks tab, spawn eggs being organized alphabetically, and getting several more spawn eggs in general from the sub-mob types like wither skeletons, elder guardians, husks, zombie villagers, etc. And finally, let's cover some of the bug fixes that are coming along with this version. There are some minor improvement ones, things like 2 tall plants no longer showing other random plants when you break them, that's finally been fixed, as has the bug making entities invisible inside of minecarts and boats. You may have also noticed that the healing and harming tipped arrows weren't doing much of anything before, and that's been fixed as well. There was also a long overdue fix for one of the oldest bugs in the game. You've undoubtedly been in the situation where you see items constantly moving or dropping off of a block, and then being unable to pick them up where they landed, instead having to go back up to where they were moving from to get them. This has finally been resolved in Minecraft 1.11, so we shouldn't need to deal with that anymore. There were a couple unfortunate casualties among these bug fixes, the first being that you will no longer try to interact with iron doors or trapdoors. What this effectively means is that any farms or machines that were taking advantage of this mechanic, usually for AFKing, are no longer going to work. Most notably, this affects most designs for AFK fishing. Don't worry though, as soon as this change was first announced, there were several new designs made within hours, so you should be able to find alternatives and fixes with a quick search on YouTube. They've also, sadly, fixed the translocation bug. This was the bug that allowed entities to be pulled through a piston when it retracted, something the community has been using quite a lot for all sorts of farms and various inventions since it was first discovered in 1.9. So, I believe that covers everything you should need to know for the 1.11 update. Naturally, if you have any questions about any of this, feel free to ask down in the comment section below, and I'll be happy to help you out. That's all I've got for you guys today. Hopefully it was helpful, and I'll see you guys next time.